Hello there. I'm Dr. Terry James Gingras, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat. And if you aren't familiar with this show, we're trying to make the world safe for ADHD. I am a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist. I am in private practice. I have a practice that always probably at least half, if not more, concerned with ADHD evaluations and treatment, and so for both children and adults. And I've been doing this for a long time. I'm also the parent of a child with ADHD, and I think he's probably taught me more than any book I ever read or conference I ever went to about exactly what this whole thing is like. And as I try to say every week, I probably have made all the mistakes it's possible to make in terms of parenting an ADHD child. And I will tell you that, back in the day, back when I was a young father, happy Father's Day, I well, like most people, did not know anything about ADHD. I somehow managed to make it all the way through a graduate program in clinical psychology without ever once hearing about ADHD. I do not know how that's possible. It's certainly not possible today. And we have just learned so much in the last 30 or 40 years about ADHD, it's not even funny. We have beaucoup research studies, we have radiologic studies that show differences. It's just a whole new world out there. And we, what do I want to say? We have advanced a great deal in the handling of ADHD. I mean, as I probably mention every week as well, it was first mentioned in the medical literature in the 1700s. And it was first treated with stimulant medication in 1937, as near as we can tell. Okay? So, compared to some other things, we've known about that for a lot longer than we have about some other psychiatric problems. And I don't know, I don't even feel very comfortable putting ADHD in as a psychiatric problem, although that's the way the literature is set up. ADHD is a neurologic condition. It's genetic based. You're born with it. And you don't outgrow it. You outgrow some of the worst aspects of hyperactivity, but you pretty much have a lifelong brain difference, and that's what we really need to focus on. It's a brain difference. Last time I was talking about the difference versus disability, and I mean the problem is the systems are not set up for ADHD kids. The way their brains work is just not exactly the way school systems are set up, or most activities as a child anyway. And that's probably even a lot of activities as an adult. That's why most adult ADHDers are entrepreneurs. Either that, or they've managed to find themselves a creative outpost in some company where they do things that not everybody does. So it's a difference, okay? It's a real difference. Why we need disability is because that's the only way we can get accommodations in the school system to kind of make life a little more bearable for these kids and get them through school, hopefully. So there's a connection, though. The whole field of psychology has started moving, like basically every other human relationship that has a psychological component, has a like human relations or any psychotherapy intervention, any supervision intervention, increasingly things are going to what is called strength-based strength-based career development, strength-based psychotherapy, strength-based counseling, strength-based human relation stuff. It comes out of the psychological literature, basically. A while ago, psychology has always been pretty much involved in negative stuff. How to make depressed people less depressed and anxious people less anxious, and so on. Not very long. I think it was Pennsylvania, University of Pennsylvania, I believe. Might have been Penn State. I get those confused. But they started a whole study of strength-based, or what they were calling positive psychology. And it was the notion that why do we spend all our time talking about the negative aspects of human psychology? How do we do things that will increase the positive aspects of human psychology? Ergo, positive psychology. It pretty much has revolutionized the way psychotherapy is done. Plus, it has had a huge impact on business and industry. It used to be that an employee was counseled on his or her weaknesses, and the attempt was made to boost those up and get them better, while totally ignoring whatever strengths the person brought to the job. Nowadays, or at least in many companies, they focus on the employee's strengths and work to increase those, figuring those in the long term gets a better return for the company. Because you have somebody who has a strength they've already developed one way or another, and so it's probably better for the company and frankly easier to have somebody become even better at what they do than to try to take their weakest areas and try to improve them. And that, of course, may never happen. But it has basically revolutionized psychotherapy. It's changed the way companies do business. It even changed the kind of employees they're looking for. But it also has a profound impact on parenting, and especially parenting for ADHD kiddos. The problem you have with an ADHD child is that they get a tremendous amount of negative feedback. The teacher's always on them about getting their work done, about paying attention, about quitting fidgeting, and a lot of times people are saying really dumb stuff like, well, if he'd just try harder, or if she'd only pay attention, etc., etc. Well, those are things that we know as parents of ADHD kids aren't going to happen. Not just because somebody with a little bit of power wishes it would. It's just not. It's not possible. And so we fight with that. We have a problem with that just because it's not going to happen. Okay? It's a difference in the way their brains work. Now, if I tell parents that, oh boy, are you lucky? Your kid is creative. He thinks outside the box. She gets along really well with people. She's got a great sense of humor. Boy, you're a lucky parent. They're going to be all pleased. If I tell them about the same child, well, your son or daughter has problems paying attention. They have problems being fidgety. They have problems getting work done on time. Da 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 da. It's a downer. Okay, so it's the same kid. It's exactly the same kid. I mean, we know for a fact that ADHD kids tend to be problem solvers, outside the box thinkers, creatives. Uh, they tend to like a little bit of risk, which is not a bad thing in life. They also frequently see solutions to problems that many of us don't see. They have a unique way of looking at the world that's valuable. It's valuable to us, it's valuable to our society. But they don't get a lot of credit for it. And that's where we as parents and the whole strength based notion, you need to praise them for their strengths, and you need to try to develop their strengths. If they're naturally artistic, you want to let them be creative in that area. If they're creative in some other area, you want to encourage that. That's important. And that should never be the thing you use to punish them. I'm not going to let you go to art class because you didn't turn in your homework on time. No, you can't do that. You need to be looking at them and trying to improve their strengths. And of course, part of what you need to do is you need to be observing them enough that you know what those strengths are. And then it's encouraged, activities, lessons, sometimes just leaving them alone and letting them go at it and just making sure they've got whatever materials they need, if any. Not everything is about taking a lesson. And especially if you have an ADHD child, that sometimes is not what you want to be doing. So it's called strength-based parenting, and it's, basically, I describe a lot of it in my book, but I called it strategic parenting because I didn't want to get it confused with the more traditional psychology approaches to things. But it's the same idea. We find the strengths, we encourage the strengths, we reinforce the strengths, we build it up, make them better and better at what they're good at naturally. And that's when you really think about it. Punishment, what does punishment do? Punishment temporarily stops certain behaviors. And sometimes what you get after a short downtime is worse than what you started out with. You want to be aware that punishment is not your strongest suit as a parent, and it's not your biggest weapon. It's the whole spare the rod and spoil the child stuff is nonsense. Your greatest strength is your approval. Your greatest power is your ability to say, "Hey, good job, dude. That was a really outstanding whatever." That gets you more mileage than go to your room and tip. The traditional punishment things. That's way weaker, and it's typically not very pointed. It doesn't exactly point at the behavior in the way you'd like to think it does. So, I have been there. I have been in the punishment side of the house. It's never worked out very well, and the encouragement side of the house is way stronger and way likely to have you let you have a relationship with your adult child. So strength-based, first of all, you have to identify their strengths. You have to be watching them. My ADHD child kind of snuck up on me with artistic creativity stuff. I wasn't really expecting that. But there it was. And if I'd seen it earlier, I would have probably done some things differently. But I didn't, and we didn't. So it took us longer to get around to that. The point of all this is that You need to identify their strengths. You need to reinforce their strengths. Give them the encouragement they need. And don't forget the Lesotho rule. And if you haven't been watching this regularly, the Lesotho rule is the rule that was identified by a mathematician and an industrial psychologist. It's the ratio of positive reinforcement to criticism that results in optimal performance. And the ratio is roughly 5 to 1. So 5 positive comments for every single critical comment will keep you moving right along. That's a pretty tight ratio too, because if you reinforce more than that, and I put the participation trophies right in the top of that category, if you reinforce too much, then it stops being meaningful and they don't care. Well, it doesn't matter. Anything I do, I'm going to get positive reinforcement for. But keeping it around 5 to 1, and with an ADHD, sometimes it's hard to get that high, but it's important to do that, and always be encouraging. I believe in you. I know you can do this. Da 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 da. Okay, and that's basically strength-based parenting. That's the notion that you encourage their strengths, tolerate their weaknesses, somewhat. Okay, you still have to do some things. You still have to demonstrate and teach responsibility, demonstrate and teach a certain amount of self-discipline, and those things. A certain amount of ethical behavior. Although, Lord knows, looking at the news nowadays, it's a little hard to see much of that. But if it's important to you, it's going to be important to them. And I think ethical behavior is like the number one thing that we talked about with our kids and encouraged in our children. And so I invite you to do the same with yours. Ethical, responsible, disciplined, and never give up. ADHDers tend to be really good at not giving up. And that also needs some encouragement, though. Okay, that's it for me. As you may be able to tell, I'm a little bit out of my element. I'm in a different place than I usually am when I do this show. And I'm lacking some of the things like the clock that tells me how long I've been doing this. I'm assuming I'm about right. But next weekend, I figure I'll be back where I usually am. And I'm Dr. Terry James Gingras, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, the show that tries to make the world safe for ADHD. And remember, ADHDers are outside-the-box thinkers. And outside-the-box thinkers are the folks that change the world. Look around. Look at the news of the people that are, making big changes in the world, and you will see in their background that most of them had some characteristics of ADHD. But therefore, it is important that you do the best job you possibly can raising and encouraging your ADHD child, because who knows, he or she may be the one that solves the big problems and saves the world. Okay, we will catch you next time. And if you have questions or anything, write them down below here, or over here, or over here, or wherever the opening is. Any questions you have, things you'd like me to answer, comment on, that sort of thing, let me know. Okay? Catch you next time.